Golf prides itself on being a gentleman's sport. Silence, respect, strict rules. But there are days when all of that disappears. In this video, you'll see bursts of anger, locker room insults, shameful provocations, betrayals between teammates, and acts so crude they changed the game's history. This is not just any compilation. This is a countdown of the 20 most disrespectful acts ever seen on a golf course. And what happens at number 1 still embarrasses an entire nation. Explosion in the Augusta locker room. Masters Tournament. 2005. Hold on tight, because this didn't happen just anywhere. It happened at Augusta National, home of the Masters. The place where rules aren't questioned, where silence weighs more than applause, and where, in 2005, two champions nearly came to blows. It's Friday, the second round of the most prestigious tournament in the world. Phil Mickelson and Vijay Singh, two heavyweights in world golf, are battling to make the cut. Singh is in the group behind Mickelson, and he's not happy with what he sees. He claims Mickelson's metal spikes are leaving marks on the greens, but instead of speaking to him directly, he files a formal complaint with tournament officials. Up to that point, the conflict is silent. But when Mickelson finds out, everything changes. He finishes his round, walks into the champion's locker room, a reserved, almost sacred space, and hears Singh talking about the incident with other players. Without warning, he approaches, stands in front of him, and confronts him. He throws insults at him, calls him a son of a, with restrained fury, yells that if he has something to say, he should say it to his face, and ends with a direct challenge. Let's go outside if you want to talk like a man. Witnesses describe the scene as seconds away from a physical altercation. In Augusta, in the champion's locker room, a place where something like that should never, in theory, happen. No punches were thrown. But the tension was so heavy, so brutally real, that this episode is still remembered as one of the most embarrassing moments ever witnessed between professionals in the most solemn place in golf. Speeding in the hole, the image no one forgets. WGC Championship 2007. In golf, there are mistakes. There are unfortunate reactions. And then there's this. An act that crossed the line of respect, decency, and hygiene. It happened in 2007 during the WGC Championship. Sergio García, one of the most talented and also most temperamental players on tour, was having a rough day. He had missed putts, lost chances, and the 13th hole was the breaking point. Garcia lines up a short put and misses it. He stands still for a second, holding back frustration. Then he bends down, approaches the hole, and spits directly inside it. Not on the grass, not to the side, inside the hole where the next player had to sink his ball. Everything was caught on camera. The footage reached millions of viewers in no time. The reaction was immediate. Players, commentators, and fans condemned the gesture. The media called it disgusting, rude, unacceptable. For many, it was simply revolting. It wasn't just a lack of sporting respect. It was a deliberate aggression toward the next competitor. The pressure was so strong that Sergio García had to issue an official apology. He admitted his behavior was shameful and even described it as one of the stupidest things I've done in my career. The PGA didn't sanction him, but public judgment was relentless. The video went viral, and with it, an unforgettable lesson. In golf, respect is non-negotiable, and what you do in seconds can mark you forever. Snub on the green. When respect disappears. President's Cup 2024. Royal Montreal. Some people think golf is too proper, too clean. But when pressure spikes and egos clash, the outcome can be very different. And that's exactly what happened at the 2024 President's Cup. First day of competition at Royal Montreal. Tom Kim and Sung Jae Im, two rising stars of the international team, faced the U.S. team led by Scottie Scheffler, the world number 1. From the start, tension kept building. On the 7th hole, Tom Kim sinks a long-distance putt. Instead of a discreet celebration, he turns toward his opponents and unleashes a shout full of adrenaline, staring straight at them. It was provocative, defiant. Scheffler didn't stay quiet. On the next hole, he answers with a birdie and yells back at Kim, returning the gesture. The atmosphere became electric. Cameras captured every move, every expression. But the worst was still coming. On the 8th hole, after finishing the play, Kim and him walked straight to the next tee, while Scheffler still had his birdie putt remaining. In golf, that's a clear sign of disrespect. Not just a protocol issue, it's an unwritten rule. Players are expected to remain until everyone finishes the hole. The gesture was interpreted as a public slight, a dismissal. NBC's commentators were visibly uncomfortable. Paul McGinley, former player and analyst, was blunt. This borders on unsporting behavior. Hours later, it came out that the players were simply following a tactical instruction from their assistant captain, K.J. Choi, who told them to move on, to avoid further emotional escalation. But the explanation came too late. What remained was the image. The young international stars turning their backs, leaving the world number one alone on the green. A scene many still debate, and one that redefined the line between strategy and disrespect. Brooksy, the taunt that made Bryson DeChambeau snap a breeze. BMW Championship, 2021. In modern golf, the rivalry between Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka marked a period filled with media attention, memes, crossed gestures, and provocations that went too far. It all began as a joke among fans. After an interview in which Bryson rolled his eyes at the mention of Koepka's name, spectators found a new way to provoke him, shouting Brooksy every time he played. At first, Bryson tried to hide it. He smiled. It became part of the atmosphere, until everything exploded at the 2021 BMW Championship. Bryson had just lost an exhausting playoff. He was frustrated, physically and mentally drained. "Nice job, Brooksy." DeChambeau stopped immediately. He turned sharply. He stared at the fan with restrained rage and yelled, "Get the hell out." Silence fell. Then a few nervous laughs. Security stepped in before things escalated. But the damage was done. The video went viral within minutes. The PGA Tour's reaction was unprecedented. They officially banned spectators from shouting Brooksy at events. A taunt born as a joke had caused so much disruption that the organization had to create a specific conduct rule. And to make things worse, Brooks Koepka took advantage of the moment to stir the pot. He posted a video on social media offering free beer to any fan expelled for yelling Brooksy. The message was clear. The feud wasn't over. The episode marked a turning point. It was the first time a persistent fan chant forced an official change in spectator conduct rules at professional tournaments. In a sport built on calm, respect, and self-control, Bryson showed that even the most prepared players have a breaking point. The scandal that almost buried Vijay Singh's career. Asia Golf Circuit, 1985. Long before becoming world number one, before winning majors or lifting big trophies, Vijay Singh was an unknown young professional trying to survive on the Asian circuit. And it was there, at the beginning of his journey, where his career nearly ended forever. In 1985, Singh played a small tournament without cameras or international coverage, but with his professional future on the line. During the second round, he was close to missing the cut. His chance to earn money that week depended on a tiny margin on his scorecard. When he finished, officials reviewed the scores, and they accused him of deliberately altering his card, changing a bogey to a birdie to improve his result. One stroke, one line, one number. But in golf, that changes everything. Singh denied the accusation firmly. He said it was an unintentional mistake with no plan to cheat, but the organization didn't believe him. He was suspended. From one day to the next, his reputation collapsed. His career froze. For years, he carried that mark. And although he later reached the top level of world golf, earning more than $70 million and winning major tournaments, The 1985 scandal never fully disappeared. Some whispered about it. Others spoke with disdain. In a sport built on absolute honesty, that episode remains an uncomfortable shadow. To this day, Singh maintains his innocence. But for many, that tournament was proof that even future champions can begin their journey under suspicion. The caddy who lost control during an international tournament. President's Cup, Melbourne, 2019. Patrick Reed is known for his talent and for a long record of controversies. But in 2019, he wasn't the one who crossed the line. It was his own caddy, and the incident was so serious that he ended up expelled from the tournament. It all began days before the President's Cup, when Reed was caught improving his lie in a bunker, something many considered a blatant rules violation. Although he denied it, the footage was clear. The news spread quickly, and by the time Reed landed in Melbourne, he was already the villain of the event. From the first shot, Australian fans made him feel their disdain. Cheater. Sandman. Every word, every look was a constant provocation. For 3 days, Reed collected losses. And his caddy Kessler Karain, who is also his brother-in-law, watched it all from the cart, unable to intervene, until he couldn't take it anymore. After another defeat, as they were leaving the course, a spectator shouted yet another insult. This time, Karain got off the cart, walked straight toward the fan, and shoved him hard. Security intervened immediately. No further blows were exchanged, but the gesture was enough. The organizing committee expelled him from the President's Cup. The next day, Patrick Reed had to play his match without him. It was the first documented case of a caddy suspended from that event. In a statement, Karain said he was defending his player from constant and intolerable verbal abuse. But the decision was final. For the first time, the President's Cup became the scene of a physical altercation between a team member and the public. And the most ironic part, Reed was at the center of the scandal, without lifting a finger. Dave Hill versus the USGA, the most brutal attack on a golf course. U.S. Open, 1970, Hazeltine National Golf Club. Most players, after finishing a tough tournament, offer polite answers. The course was challenging. It was a technical test, demanding conditions. Dave Hill was not one of them. At the 1970 U.S. When asked what he thought of Hazeltine National Golf Club's design, Hill replied with a devastating line. "It looks like someone ruined a beautiful farm." Reporters weren't sure they had heard correctly. But Hill wasn't done. Someone in the back asked what he thought the course was missing. His answer was even harsher. 80 acres of corn and a few cows. The attack wasn't just against the layout. It was a direct hit at the USGA, the governing body of American golf, which considers the US Open its flagship event. And as if that weren't enough, Hill delivered another line that became engraved in the darker chapters of golf history. Mowing grass and putting up flags doesn't make a golf course. The scandal was immediate. USGA officials, publicly humiliated, fined him $150, a symbolic amount, but enough to record their disapproval. Hill didn't apologize. He didn't soften his remarks. And although his runner-up finish was outstanding, his time at Hazeltine is remembered less for the birdies and more for the microphone. It was perhaps the fiercest criticism ever directed at a U.S. Open host course. A criticism still whispered today in the USGA offices. Rory Sabatini, the partner no one wanted. PGA Tour. 2010 seconds. Golf may be an individual sport, but it forces players to coexist. Practice rounds, team formats, shared routines. And if there was someone who broke all of that again and again, it was Rory Sabatini. For years, Sabatini was considered the least liked player on tour, not because of his results, but because of his behavior. Everyone knew it. In a 2007 Sports Illustrated Players poll on the PGA Tour, one question stood out. Which player do you least want to be paired with? Sabatini was number one, by a wide margin. The reason? His complete disregard for others' pace and on-course etiquette. While players waited patiently for their partners to hit, Sabatini would simply walk ahead, moving to the next tee before anyone else had finished. On multiple occasions, he was seen leaving the green, while another player still had a putt pending. These weren't mistakes, they were deliberate decisions. And his attitude didn't stop at passive gestures. In 2005, he publicly called out Ben Crane for slow play. Instead of addressing it with an official, he did it during the round, displaying impatience, making comments out loud, and acting superior, a behavior that angered many. But the most memorable moment came in 2007, when he dared to challenge Tiger Woods in a press conference. Sabatini, who at the time had no major achievements, declared that Woods was no longer as unbeatable as people think. An arrogant, unnecessary, and completely misplaced comment. The result? Woods ignored him, then went back on the course and won his next tournament with effortless dominance. The press and players didn't take long to condemn Sabatini's remarks. But the worst came in 2011, when he shouted at and reprimanded a teenage volunteer during the Northern Trust Open. The boy had made a small mistake in his duties, and Sabatini didn't hesitate to scold him publicly. The situation grew so tense that another player, Sean O'Hare, stepped in to defend the young volunteer. He confronted Sabatini face to face, demanding respect. Asked about the incident, Sabatini dismissed everything as ridiculous rumors, but the facts spoke for themselves. Rory Sabatini didn't just play with disregard for golf's unwritten rules. He played with disregard for the people around him, and that's why he earned a spot on this list. Not for one moment, but for a long track record of disrespect. Phil Mickelson and the moving ball stroke that shook golf. U.S. Open, Shinnecock Hills, 2018. Phil Mickelson has been, for decades, one of the most popular golfers in the world. Charismatic, competitive, respected. But on his 48th birthday, he committed an act that left audiences stunned and golf purists outraged. U.S. Open, Shinnecock Hills, extreme conditions. The greens were rock hard, the wind relentless. Phil was having a terrible day. He reached the 13th hole, visibly frustrated. And then, the unthinkable happened. He hits a downhill putt. The ball misses the hole and starts rolling away quickly. Then suddenly, Phil runs after the ball and hits it again before it stops. A stroke with the ball still moving. The crowd couldn't believe it. Commentators stayed silent for several seconds. One finally broke the silence with a single line. "I don't know whether to laugh or cover my face." In a sport where players are expected to accept the consequences of every shot, Phil had taken an absurd shortcut. Almost childish. As if he'd been playing mini-golf. Criticism came immediately. Some called for disqualification. Others accused him of making a mockery of the rules in front of millions. But the most shocking moment came in the press conference. When asked if he had lost control, Mickelson answered coldly, "I knew exactly what I was doing. It was better to hit it and take the penalty than let the ball roll off the green." An open admission, a deliberate act, and an explanation that split the golf world. For some, it was a clever play within the rules. For others, a complete lack of respect for the spirit of the game. What is certain is that on the 13th of June 2018, Phil Mickelson was not the elegant ambassador golf had known for years. He was simply the protagonist of one of the most controversial scenes in modern golf history. Patrick Reed breaks the silence and betrays his team. Ryder Cup, 2018. Le Golf National, Paris. When a team loses, the usual response is to stay quiet, accept the defeat with dignity, and move forward. But Patrick Reed chose to do the opposite. And his interview, just hours after the United States fell in the 2018 Ryder Cup, became an unprecedented public betrayal. The Ryder Cup is more than a tournament. It's a symbol. It's the United States versus Europe, an event where unity is everything, where players compete for their country, not themselves. But in Paris, the American team was thoroughly outplayed. Europe dominated from day one. And by Sunday night, with the cup lost, the American players tried to maintain composure, all except one. Patrick Reed. Hours after the finish, Reed sat down with a New York Times journalist and opened fire. First, he went after the team captain, Jim Furyk. He accused him of ruining the pairings. But then he went further. He claimed Jordan Spieth refused to play with him, breaking up one of the most successful pairings from previous editions. He was blunt. They told me I'd play with Jordan, but he didn't want to. Ask him. With that sentence, Reed exposed internal divisions, broke the locker room code, and made it clear that, in his eyes, the blame lay with everyone except himself. Instead of standing together after a defeat, he pointed fingers at teammates, the captain, the entire system. The impact was immediate. Media outlets worldwide amplified his comments. Jordan Spieth didn't respond. Furyk didn't either. But the damage was done. What should have been a quiet, bitter ending turned into a storm of egos and internal conflict. In a tournament where players represent their country, Reed chose to represent only himself. And for many, that was the biggest act of disrespect in the entire Ryder Cup, shirts off during a tournament. The day the caddies lost it all, except their dignity. Solheim Cup, 2024. Robert Trent Jones Golf Club. The Solheim Cup showcases the best of international women's golf. Europe versus the United States. Competition, pride, discipline. But in 2024, on the second hole, something happened that no one expected, not even the people involved. American player Allison Lee was preparing a shot from 86 yards. It was a tense moment. But just before she swung, on the tee box, both caddies made a joking bet. Jack Fulham, one of them, said, "If either of you holds it from here, we pay $500. It all seemed like harmless banter until Allison Lee countered with something that changed everything. "Better. If we hold it, you two take your shirts off." Laughter. Jokes. Impossible. And then it happened. Lee struck her shot. The ball landed on the green, spun back, and dropped straight into the hole for eagle, a 2 on a par 4. In a professional event, the crowd erupted, and the caddies kept their word. Fulham crossed the green taking off his shirt, bag in one hand and bib in the other. Taylor Takata, from the opposing team, threw his shirt in the air while running in circles, celebrating as if he'd won a major. Cameras caught it all. The crowd loved it. But not everyone approved. On social media, traditional golf fans complained about a lack of professionalism and a loss of respect for the game. Some called it an embarrassing display. The caddies didn't defend themselves. They didn't apologize. They simply honored a silly bet, doing it in front of thousands on the course and millions watching. In a sport so strict, where every gesture is judged, this moment broke all expectations. And although there were no insults or aggression, many saw it as a slight toward the tournament, the format, and the legacy of the Solheim Cup. She shouldn't be here. The day progress was rejected. Colonial Invitational, 2003, Fort Worth, Texas. Professional golf has old codes, unyielding traditions, and in 2003, when Annika Sörenstam, the most dominant player in women's golf, decided to compete in a men's PGA Tour event, many saw it as a historic step forward. Others, however, saw it as a threat. Sörenstam didn't arrive by courtesy invite. She earned her place. The previous year, she had won 13 tournaments. Her level was undeniable. The expectation was immense. Media from all over the world followed her every move. But one of her own male colleagues chose to attack her from day one. Vijay Singh, one of the tour's most successful players, delivered a line that set the tone for the event. "I hope she misses the cut. She doesn't belong here." The statement went international. The impact was immediate. Instead of a welcome, Annika received a direct message of exclusion. The women's golf community, analysts, and even several players criticized Singh's words harshly. The pressure grew so strong that days later he tried to backtrack, saying he'd been misunderstood, but it was too late. The message was out. A part of men's golf wasn't ready to share the stage. And the most ironic part, Singh withdrew from the tournament citing fatigue shortly after the controversy exploded. He didn't play. He gave no explanation. He simply vanished. Annika didn't make the cut, but her performance was worthy, sharp, professional, and above all, historic. She didn't break into the leaderboard, but her presence alone exposed a resistance that still makes many uncomfortable in professional golf. Tom Kim's explosion. When the smile turned into fists, Genesis Championship 2024, South Korea. Tom Kim is known for his talent, his upbeat energy, his constant smile. But golf is unforgiving, and when pressure reaches its peak, even the most cheerful players can break. And that's exactly what happened at the 2024 Genesis Championship in front of his home crowd. Kim had enjoyed a brilliant week. At home, with the fans behind him, he reached Sunday fighting for the title against fellow Korean Byung-Hun An. Destiny, cruel as always, took them to a playoff, one-on-one, Korea versus Korea, maximum tension. At the deciding hole, Kim needed a perfect shot from an awkward stance. 1 foot in the bunker, ball above his line. A technical, delicate shot. And he missed it. The ball flew out of control, crossed the green, hit a structure, and landed among the spectators. The championship slipped away before his eyes. And holed out, Kim stared into nothing, silence, then walked to the locker room. And that's when chaos erupted. Witnesses reported hearing a loud crash, blows, contained shouts. When his team entered the locker room, door number 571 was destroyed. The hinge torn off. Wood splintered. A moment of pure rage. His team tried to soften the story to the press. He opened it too hard. But nobody believed it. Kim said nothing. He didn't apologize. But the images of the broken locker spread through Korean media, social networks, and international forums. The contrast was striking. The cheerful young star, beloved just weeks earlier, was now at the center of one of the most obvious outbursts of anger in recent golf history. And although there was no official penalty, many wondered, can a player who loses control like that represent the new generation of golf? The comment that pushed Sergio García to the edge. The Players' Championship 2013, Pontevedra Beach, Florida. Rivalries in golf are usually settled through performance. But in 2013, Sergio García crossed a line that had nothing to do with sport or competition. During the Players' Championship, his long-standing tension with Tiger Woods, already simmering from previous years, reached its peak. It all began with a complaint. Garcia accused Tiger of distracting the crowd by pulling a club from his bag right as Sergio was taking a swing. The gesture, according to Garcia, was intentional. Woods denied it fully. The tension between them grew with each day of the tournament. And then came the fatal question. At a gala dinner before the event's conclusion, Garcia was asked, casually, if he would ever invite Tiger to dinner. His answer was immediate and brutally offensive. I'll invite him over and serve him fried chicken. What he may have meant as a joke, a very poor one, was instantly recognized as a racially insensitive remark with painful historical connotations in the United States. The reaction was swift. The press, players, sponsors, everyone condemned Garcia's words. TaylorMade, one of his main sponsors, dropped him. Several players refused to speak to him for days. Tiger Woods responded calmly but firmly. What he said was inappropriate. He knows that. Garcia was forced to hold a press conference to publicly apologize. He said he was embarrassed and admitted his words were unjustifiable. But the damage was already done. It wasn't an action on the course. It wasn't frustration boiling over. It was a remark that, in seconds, took him out of the sports narrative and placed him in the center of a far deeper debate. And although his career continued, that sentence will follow him forever. Because in golf, there is no room for that type of language on or off the green. That wasn't conceded. The deception that made an entire team cry. Solheim Cup, 2015, Street Leonrod, Germany. The Solheim Cup brings together the best golfers from Europe and the United States. It's intense, strategic, always built on one principle: mutual respect. In 2015, that balance broke in seconds. Sunday morning. Europe leads 10-6. The American duo Alison Lee and Brittany Lincicome face Europeans Suzann Pettersen and Charlie Hull. The match is tied, and the key moment arrives, the 17th hole. Lee misses a birdie putt by centimeters. The ball stops about 40 centimeters from the hole. In match play, that kind of putt is almost always conceded without words, a glance, a nod, a simple gesture. Alison Lee assumes it was conceded. She bends down, picks up the ball, and starts walking away. But Pettersen, standing beside the green, stays silent. And seconds later, declares she did not concede it. The referee is called. The ruling is automatic. By lifting the ball without confirmation, Lee loses the hole. Europe takes the lead. The reaction is immediate and harsh. Charlie Hull, Pettersen's teammate, bursts into tears. The U.S. captain, Julie Inkster, erupts. "You don't do that. It's unfair. It's dishonorable." Tension spread through the entire event. On social media, fans called the move the coldest trick ever seen in women's golf. Some European players privately admitted they felt uncomfortable winning that way. Pettersen defended her decision at the time, saying she was within the rules. But years later, in 2019, she publicly admitted she had been wrong. "I shouldn't have done it. I made a mistake." The action was legal, but what was at stake that day went far beyond a single point. It was the foundation of match play: trust, courtesy, honesty. And that moment, simple yet painful, remains one of the deepest ruptures in the spirit of women's golf. You're fired. At the boarding gate. The cruelest way to end a golf partnership. Manchester Airport, 2006, LPGA Tour. In golf, the relationship between a player and a caddy is far more than professional. Trust, routine, shared silence, common discipline. That's why, when Michelle V, one of the most high-profile rising stars in women's golf, fired her caddy Greg Johnston, it wasn't the decision itself, but the way she did it that shocked the entire tour. V, then a teenage prodigy, had been struggling for weeks. Her results weren't convincing, but few expected such a drastic change. And absolutely no one expected what happened at Manchester Airport in the United Kingdom. Johnston, a respected tour veteran with major wins alongside other players, was quietly waiting at the boarding gate. They were traveling together to the next event, as they had for months. And it was there, minutes before boarding, when Michelle V's agent approached him and said bluntly, "Greg, you won't be working with Michelle anymore. You're off the team." No conversation, no call, not even a personal word from the player or her parents. Johnston was stunned. He had to board the flight with the group as if nothing had happened, knowing he had been dismissed without dignity. Days later, speaking to the press, he was measured but direct. "I'm disappointed, not by the firing, but by the way it happened." The golf world reacted with disbelief. No one questioned the player's right to change caddies. But doing it like that, at the boarding gate, through a third party, without a word of thanks, was labeled by many as the cruelest dismissal in recent professional golf. Michelle V made no statement. Silence was her only response. But that brief, quiet episode left a deep mark. Because in golf, as in life, respect is measured in the uncomfortable moments too. Ryder Cup 1999. When respect was trampled on the green. The Country Club, Brookline, Massachusetts, United States. No tournament has witnessed a scene as chaotic, as uncontrolled, and as utterly shameful as the 1999 Ryder Cup. It was the final day. Europe was ahead. The United States needed a miracle comeback. And on the 17th hole, Justin Leonard faced a 45-foot putt to seal one of the most dramatic turnarounds in the event's history. An almost impossible chance. Leonard strikes the putt. The ball rolls. Slow, steady, perfect. And it drops. But it wasn't a restrained celebration, not a fist pump. It was an invasion. Players, caddies, captains, wives, assistants, photographers, everyone rushed onto the green, shouting, jumping, hugging on top of the putting line. As if the tournament were over, but it wasn't over. Jose Maria Olazábal still had to hit his own putt. A putt that, if holed, would have kept Europe's hopes alive. But that no longer mattered to the Americans. The green had been trampled. The focus was broken. The line, disturbed, and respect, gone. Olazábal had to wait for the green to clear, regain focus, try to recreate the moment, and he missed. Europe lost. But what millions remembered wasn't the defeat. It was the total chaos, broadcast live to the entire world. European Vice-Captain Sam Torrance said it without hesitation. It was an absolute disgrace. A pathetic spectacle. European media reacted with fury. Words like national shame, a stain on golf's history, and the day the spirit of the Ryder Cup was trampled filled headlines. The Americans won that edition, but the prize was enormous, because the image that remained forever was that of a green turned into a carnival, while a European player still had to play his shot, a tainted victory, and a finish that remains, without question, the most disrespectful moment in golf history. Golf is a sport built on codes, respect, and silence. But as we've seen today, it also has moments when all of that disappears. When pressure becomes unbearable, when egos collide, when emotion overwhelms restraint. These 20 episodes didn't just mark the people involved. They marked the entire sport. And they reminded us that even on the most sacred courses, the line of respect can break in a single second. If you made it this far, thank you for joining us in this direct, unfiltered look at the moments golf would rather forget. And if you enjoy stories with history, real tension, and powerful narratives, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and let us know in the comments which moment you found most shocking. Or if we missed one that deserved a spot on the list. See you in the next video.